transferring data between ASP.NET pages. This is a very important topic for beginners. For those who are simply working on a single page, on controls, using radio buttons, using buttons and all, if you ever want to transfer data between your pages, you might need certain mechanics in ASP.NET. Now this is one such beginner's video which will be discussing the bare minimum that is required to convey a page information to another page, or to convey the page's information to the whole website as a whole. We will see in details about this mechanics. Let us fire up Visual Studio. Let us create a new website. Let us name it appropriately. Transferring data, that is fine. And let us create the application. First of all, let me add a single web page in this website. Right click, add new item. Go to web form and click add. Now on this web form, on this web page, whatever you say, I'm going to keep things simple by adding a simple text box and a button. We will type something onto the text box and we want that information to be transferred to another page. That is a simple scenario. Let us come to the toolbox. Let us drag and drop a text box onto the surface. Let us type in here that enter your name or user ID, whatever. Let us drag and drop a text box onto this web page, and let me drag and drop a button. Let me name it as go to next page. Now this text box's name is text box 1. I am not changing the name of the text box. We could have changed the ID of the text box, but I am not changing this. And the button's name is button 1, though I should change it, because if I keep any more button in this page, button transfer. That's fine. And that we'll be double clicking on this to write some code so that the data is taken from the text box and it will be transferring me to another page. But for that we need to add another page. Right click on this and let us add another page as default2.aspx. Click the button add to drop another page on our website. Come to the design menu and let us put a button and let us put a label. Now if I click the button, the information that was transferred by the earlier page, that is default.aspx, will be shown on this label. I hope you are getting the point. It's very simple. that is initially default.aspx page will be opened in my browser. I will be typing my name, and go to next page will be transferring me to default2.aspx, and in default2.aspx if I click this button, then the name will be displayed in this label, the name that I entered in this particular field, and I click next. Then here my name will be displayed down here in this label. Let us name this button appropriately, get data, that's it, or read data rather, this is better, read data. That is, you have transferred the data, and the data is within the page. For that you are reading the data, the information will be sent in this label. Let us wipe out, clear the initial text onto this label, so that the label comes blank when the next page loads. So that is it, very simple. Now the way to do this is very simple. We can, to transfer data between pages, the first and the easiest solution is to create a session variable. That is the easiest approach, but that comes with a price. I will tell you later. Let us add a session variable, and let us give it a name. Let the name of the session variable is x, and within x let me store the data that is present within this text box, whose name is text box 1. So let us name it as this text box 1 dot text. So text box 1's text is getting stored inside session x variable. Now the session x is containing the data. That is important for us to transfer the data. Now there should be a mechanism that how to push the page to the next page. Do you get my point? In this way you have stored the data in a global area known as session x. Now what we will do is that in this page default2.aspx, when we read the data, we will simply write this simple code. The level 1's text property equated to session x. That's because sessions give you an object type by default. Object is a general type, so I need to convert it to string before I make it display into this label's text property. So sessions x dot toString is appropriate to convert the session data to a string value, then showing it onto this label's text property. This is fine, but it is also important for us, once you click this button, what you have done is that you have saved the text box's data into session. Then another important line of code that should run is to physically push you to default2.aspx. Now this will be doing a kind of redirection from default.aspx to default2.aspx. The way to do this is very simple. Response dot redirect to the next page's name, that is default2.aspx. You get the point? Default2.aspx. Now response redirect is a code that simply makes you transfer to a different web page. In this case it is default2.aspx. It is not like response redirect has always to be run in conjunction with session. We are using session just because we want to save our data before you make a transfer to the next page, a redirection to the next page. Let us run this application. It's very simple. As you click this button, simply save the data into a variable and you transfer to the next page, that is default2.aspx. Let us run this application. That fires our ASP.NET development server, which is a scaled down small server just to facilitate running of local debuggable ASP.NET application in Visual Studio. That has bring up the browser. The default browser is set to Firefox at this time. It's now connecting to the local host to read the default.aspx. The data has come. The page has come. It says that enter your name. I gotta enter my name. This is Mr. Sudipto. If I click to go to next page, then it transfers me to default2.aspx. You see. Now if I here click read data, information is read from the session and shown on this label. So you have successfully seen how to read data between two different pages using session variable. But the session is too much heavy for the web server. The reason is this: session variables will normally occupy a server's RAM's area, server's memories area, until and unless the user logs out. The user shuts down his browser. Do you think that this data, Sudipto, the information within the session, should be any more available after you have transferred the data to the next page? My question is, this data was only important to transfer data from one page to the next page, but after the data is transferred, the data carrier should be deleted. The session X should be deleted. In case if you forget to delete this, then session X will be remaining available all throughout your user session, that is, will be held inside the server's memory, because session data are stored in the web server's memory. Now think about, if every user is using his own username, own information, in that case the web server will very soon be bogging down, because lot of session data means lot of memory pressure on the server's RAM. Now this session data will be created one for every user. Please understand that if you are running this application, I can emulate multiple user by running multiple browsers. Please understand this concept. It is very vital that you must understand this concept. Let us run this browser, the first one. Let us copy this. Let us open Chrome. Now that we are in two different browsers, we have emulated two different users. One is say from USA, another is say from India. Fine. So these are two different users. Now that the user in USA is entering his name and clicking to next page, the session data for him is John. So session X is storing John for him. The user in India is clicking the same thing, the read data, but for him the name in session X is Sudipto. That is, it is not like that. The session X, the X will be a single variable on the web server's RAM. One X is created per user. So if there are 10 million users, so 10 million X will be created. Now every X will be for every single user. Now you might ask this question: how do this web server differentiates between these different X's? I mean, which X is for which user? Are you getting the point? You might ask me that, okay, we understand that there are different session X defined for every single user into the web server's RAM, but how do this web server identifies which X is for which user? Truly speaking, whenever you open up your browser and visit a page in ASP.NET Server, it creates an unique session identifier, and the session identifier is stored as a session cookie into your browser. So every time you are hitting the same web server from the same browser, or rather from the same user, that session identifier will be remaining the same. Session identifiers are some numbers, some encrypted numbers, and those numbers are saved inside this browser's RAM. Please understand. So this browser is having a different session identifier stored within its RAM, that is running in this local machine, and this browser will be having a different session identifier stored within this client's browser's RAM. And every time if you click something, if you read data internally, that session identifier is being transferred to the web server, and that session identifier's X value is being read and it is displayed. So the session identifier is dynamically created by the web server and is given to this client's browser, and the client's browser silently maintains the session's identifier. The thing is that a copy of session's identifier is also stored on the server, so that it can identify your variable, I mean this browser's variable, and all X and all Y and all Z and all other different variables. So a single session identifier will be binding to all the different session variables that you're using on the web server. So if the session identifier is say ABCD, then that ABCD will be binding to X, will be binding to Y, will be binding to Z. And for it, if the session identifier is say QWERT, then the QWERT will be stored internally into the browser's RAM first of all, and also in the server somewhere it will be maintained as a table, and it will be responsible for reading your X, your Y and your Z different session variables. So too much of theory, you don't have to worry about all these things. Just think about one thing, that using session variable will definitely be putting pressure in your web server. If you're using a whole lot of session variable, if you're using too much of session variables, then it will be creating some pressure in the web server's RAM. And the task that we are doing here, just to transfer data from one page to another, for this session variables should not be used. There is some other alternative, though it is a bit tricky. We are using more code, but it is better for web server's RAM. We will simply be transferring data over to the query string. Now what is query string? Query strings are data of this particular sort. Please understand that whenever you are seeing some, like maybe Yahoo, maybe Google, whatever, www some website.com, say xyz.com, some pages name, say default.aspx, and then the query string concept is that the page is fired with some information. The page itself is not being run like this, but the page is being supplied with some information when the page is running, so that the page can use this information. You must have done command line arguments previously if you have coded in C, C++, Java, C#, wherever. You might have done this command line argument. They are being used to pass in information to a executable program, so that the program can use this information even before you have started the program. You type the command and arguments and press enter, so that the program can use this information. On similar grounds, you can think, even before the web page has started, you are supplying the web page with some information, and this information can be supplied by giving an exclamation sign like this, sorry, an interrogation sign like this, sign of interrogation, and then you put up different variables, like say x equals to 65, and then comma, not comma exactly, you put ampersand. Why? Now ampersand works like a comma here. This is a rule which you cannot bypass. Y equals, say, some string data, maybe Shudipto, then another variable, say my mobile number, equals, you can actually you can name them appropriately. Say instead of Y, I can write name equals Shudipto, mobile as my number, which is 93318979923, and we can fire this web page by supplying this information. So you see once more, this is the web page default.aspx. I am simply not firing this web page in this way, rather I am putting up certain information onto this web page, pushing in some information, that is x. Let us name this as ID. Say my ID is 67, name is Shudipto, and mobile number is 93318979923. So in this way I am passing in three information. Now don't think about this integer data, something is string data, don't think about this, something is long data. No worries about this. All this data is internally treated as string, whether this is number, or whether this is really a string, or whether this is date time. If you are passing something like this, this is known as query string. Query string. In query string, the data are always in string format. So you can actually do a response or redirect to a next page by, instead of just response or redirecting to default.aspx, or in this in our case default2.aspx, what we will be doing is that we will be passing the name, because we are not having a lot of different attributes in a page, we are just having name. We will just be passing name equals Shudipto, and the name data will not be hard coded like this, but will be obtained from the text boxes text. So let us copy this here, let us come up here and go to next page, but now instead of going to next page in this way, I'll be creating another button, because I don't want to touch upon the code over here. I simply want to create another button, that is next page, using QueryString. Just I name these buttons appropriately so that you can understand the differences. Let's go to next page using session. Let me write this in this way. This is by using session, and this is by using QueryString. Let us come over here. Let us name it as default one. That's fine. Button 1. That is fine. Now in this case, I'll be doing this response or redirect. The same stuff will be done, but you see the way we do it. Let me copy this, paste this. But now instead of default2.aspx, what we'll be doing is we'll be giving an interrogation sign that simply marks the starting of query string variables. You can add any number of query string variables, though there is a limit of how much the biggest length. There is some limit of what is the maximum length of this URL, because you are posting the data into the URL itself. So there is a maximum limit of how many characters you can put up into something, into the browser's URL. So you see that this is the query string, whole query string, but as because we are in the same site, I don't have to supply www.something.com because we are within the same website. Had that been a different website, I should have supplied the full URL, but as because I am on the same website but just transferring to a different page, so just typing in default2.aspx will be fine. Here I should be typing in name equals what, I don't want to put Sudipta over here, but whatever the user wants, like text box 1 dot text will be appropriate. Now in this way we can see that if I run this application, you see the information will be transferred to the next page, information will be available to the next page, but the question is how to read this information. And what is the benefit of doing this? If I write something, say xxx is my name, say go to next page, you see name equals x. Please look at this URL please. Default2.aspx is now automatically appended with this variable name equals xxx. Now that if you read data, actually the session will be consulted because my session is empty, so there will be an exception at this point. See, because my session is empty at this point, so there is an exception because object reference not set to an instance of an object. That comes only because session x is not defined, because we are no more using the first button to store our data, we are using the second one. So if you want to use this, come to default 2. I'll be commenting this code for this time instead of deleting this code. What I will do is this: I have to read the data from the query string. To read the data, I need to write this syntax or this command: request dot query string, and then you type in the exact name of the query string variable that was applied, and that's it. As because query string is already in the string format, so I don't need to typecast it to string or something of that sort, and this labels text is also in the string format, and that's what we are done. Benefit of doing this is very simple. Query string data is passed on the URL itself, so the data is not stored in the server. Data is just available only for the moment when the first page is requesting the next page, and after that the data is no more available. So that is better. We don't want to keep unnecessary memory pressure either on client or on the server's RAM. It is a better option. And one more thing about query string, as I have seen, is that if you don't have this name variable, say if someone fires this default2.aspx page without supplying any name information, in that case the query string name will be returning you an empty space, so that even doesn't create any such error like object reference not set to an instance of an object. So if the session variable is not available, it created an exception. It complained you the session x is unavailable. But if the query string data is not available, it doesn't complain, it simply returns an empty space. Let me show you this. Let me run this. We are in default.aspx at this moment. Let me type my name. and click here, go to next page, query string. The name is available. Now if I read data, I simply reads my data. Now if I modify here, so instead of Shudipto, I can here change. I can here itself change. So name equals say Srijan. Now if I hit enter, I need to reload this page. If I just don't reload this page, then it will be wrong. So I have to reload this page, and then if I read data, you see this Srijan is coming. But now if I wipe out the entire variable itself, right up to this point, hit enter and read data, it doesn't complain that of any such object reference not set to an instance of an object, or no such exception is raised. So that means using QueryString simply increases the length of your browser's URL, definitely, but it is better for communicating between two pages. It's a nice option. So that shows you how to transfer data between two different pages, either using session variable or using QueryString variable. Now one last thing about session is this: if you are using session variable, and if you find this an easy option, then the better thing is that once you come to this page, after that make sure that you session X, you nullify this. That is, if you are using this code, please understand, if you are using this code and not this code, then you pull the data from the session variable and immediately kill the session that is associated with X, so that the web server's memory will be free. So this is a option that is quite okay, but still, if you just want to transfer between two different pages, I will recommend you to use QueryString parameters. There is one benefit of using QueryString too, definitely a great benefit. Say if you are onto this default 2.aspx, instead of read data like this, you could have read this data right onto your while your page loads. So let us write this, just write it here. Instead of here, let us write it here, and let us comment this out, whole out. So at this point of time, I am really not using this buttons functionality, but I am using this page loads feature to directly load the QueryString data onto this labels text the moment the page is loaded. So let me like this: welcome followed by a space, then welcome Mr. or Mrs. whoever, welcome Shudipto. Now you see one thing, at this point of time, what I can do is you have seen one thing, or you have already done, you use it quite often, that is bookmarking a page. Bookmarks are very much favorite options for us, and if you like a page, we don't hesitate to press Ctrl D. Pressing Ctrl D bookmarks the page that is available for you to work with. You'll see this option, like let us do this stuff like enter your name, Shudipto, that's fine, and let us go to the next page, is QueryString. Now at this moment of time, say you are onto this page, web page, your user is onto this web page, and if he finds something interesting, what he will do is that he will bookmark. Now here I am pressing Ctrl D. You are not able to see this, but I am pressing Ctrl D. The moment I press Ctrl D, it says the page is bookmarked, and if you click done, the page is already bookmarked. Now if you return to this page at any moment of time, say if I open up my Firefox, now let me come to my bookmarks. See, I have different bookmarks that I was interested in. Now the last bookmark, you just see transferring data. If I click this, the moment you are written welcome, we are shown welcome Shudipto. That means if you are using QueryString, the entire string is saved, and therefore if you make a read request to the web server, automatically the web server reads or gets the information and it shows the page as you want it. Got my point? If you haven't got my point, once again, it's very simple. If you are bookmarked and as you are opening the same page, the exact variable names are being opened. You just see here, because you have bookmarked the page, so including the variables, the query string, the entire page's URL is getting saved. So as you are opening the same page, the server is able to get all the data that you have saved, and therefore you will be greeted with the same information, the same thing that you wished to see. If you have done the same thing using session variable, it would have created problem, because session is really not available. Session is destroyed once you have closed the browser, because in case of session variable, you see that no such query string data will be available, only that the page's URL will be saved as a bookmark. And if you try to reopen the same page, the problem is that it will be opening the page, but as it will not be getting the session data, because session data is lost the moment you close the browser. As because you have closed the browser, you have bookmarked the page and you have closed the browser, you have shut down your PC, you have come down to your PC after 2 days and you're opening the same bookmark. So the session was lost the very moment you have closed the browser. And if you are reopening the same browser on the same bookmark, then simply the page will be throwing an exception. It will be simply be complaining that the data is not available inside the session X. So for that to be available, you need to go to the first page default, supply your credentials, then come to this page. So the concept of bookmark is really great when you are using query string data. So that was it, dear students, just transferring data between two different pages by using session variable and query strings. I hope you have liked this video. If you have liked this video, please feel free to comment on it. Thank you very much for watching this.